The sun had barely touched the horizon when the air began to scream. It wasn't the sound of war horns or the clash of blades. It was the sound of terror itself, carried by the wind over the quiet shores of an English village. Within moments, the world these people knew, peaceful, ordinary, alive, was about to burn under the sails of the Northmen. Cinematic narration. The Vikings came like ghosts. Their longships cut through the mist with silent precision, oars moving in eerie rhythm. The villagers, still half asleep, saw shadows forming on the water, black wings of death growing larger with every heartbeat. Then came the roar, the war cries of men who lived for conquest, their axes glinting like cold fire. Doors shattered, torches flew, and the scent of smoke replaced the morning air. Chickens scattered, dogs barked, and somewhere a mother screamed for her child. There was no battle. There was only taking. Every man too slow to flee fell to the blade. Every woman became part of the plunder. The Vikings did not see them as people, only as spoils of victory, flesh that could be traded, worked, or discarded. The cries of the captured were drowned by the crackling of fire. A young girl no more than 16 was dragged from her burning home, her eyes reflecting the flames that consumed her world. To her captors, she was worth silver. To herself, she was nothing more than lost breath and fading hope. And yet, as the ships filled with captives, the sea stayed calm, mocking the chaos it carried. The Vikings rowed away, leaving behind smoke, silence, and ghosts. Behind them, England wept. Ahead of them, new markets waited: Byzantium, Baghdad, the islands of the north. For these men, the raid was only the beginning. For the captured, it was the end of everything they had ever known. As the coastline vanished behind the longships, the captives stared into the endless gray horizon. They did not yet know where they were being taken. They only knew this: whatever waited beyond the waves could not be worse than what they had already seen. But they were wrong. The sea rocked the longships like cradles of sorrow. Bound in ropes and silence, the captives huddled together, faces pale from fear, salt, and sleepless nights. Every splash of the oars echoed like a heartbeat they no longer owned. Freedom was behind them. Ahead waited the unknown. Cinematic narration days turned to weeks. The horizon never changed. The Vikings moved across the sea as if the gods themselves guided them, their laughter harsh against the cries of the enslaved. Each woman aboard the ship was stripped of her name, her dignity, and her future. The captors spoke a language none of them understood, sharp sounds filled with power and command. The youngest cried until she could no longer make a sound. An older woman, once the mother of 3, whispered prayers under her breath, prayers that the sea might swallow her before land did. But the sea was merciless. It offered no mercy, no escape, only the reflection of a burning sky. When storms came, the ships rose and fell like the chest of a dying god. Waves slammed into the wooden hulls, washing salt and blood alike. The Vikings laughed even then, holding fast to their oars as thunder split the heavens. For them, storms were omens of strength. For the captives, they were the only moments when the gods seemed close enough to hear them. Nights were worse. In the darkness, the women were chosen. Not for freedom, not for safety. The crack of rope and the sound of footsteps on wet planks told them whose turn it was. Those who returned to the deck never spoke again. Those who didn't became another story lost to the sea. As dawn broke each morning, pale light revealed the truth. Fewer faces, colder eyes, quieter cries. And still the Vikings rowed. Each stroke carried them closer to the markets of men, where silver decided who lived, who labored, and who disappeared. By the time the first coastline appeared on the horizon, the captives no longer looked like people. Their eyes were hollow, their spirits drowned long before the waves could touch them. They didn't ask where they were being taken. They no longer cared. But the world had one more cruelty to show them. The market was waiting, but they were wrong. The air was thick with heat and the stench of sweat, iron, and despair. Beneath a merciless sun, the market was alive with noise, voices bargaining, coins clinking, chains rattling. And among the goods laid out before the crowd were not spices or silk. They were people. Cinematic narration. The Viking slave markets were not hidden. They stood proudly beside the docks where longships emptied their cargo of flesh and sorrow. Men shouted in Norse and Arabic, weighing captives with the same hands that once weighed silver and gold. To them this was business, a trade as natural as breathing. Women from England, Ireland, and the Baltic stood in lines, heads bowed, bodies trembling beneath rough wool rags. Each was inspected as if she were livestock. Teeth were checked, arms lifted, hair pulled back. A merchant from the east squinted at a girl's skin and said, "She will fetch more if her scars fade." The girl said nothing. She hadn't spoken since the night of her capture. She didn't need to. Her silence was worth more than her voice. Those with youth and beauty were prized. They would be sent to noble houses, brothels, or the courts of distant empires. The old, the sick, and the weak were left for labor. Fields, kitchens, or mines where the air itself killed slowly. Silver changed hands faster than words. Each clang of coin was another life erased, another story sold. The Vikings had become merchants of human misery, connecting the cold north to the golden markets of the south. In Birka, Hedeby, and Kiev, ships arrived daily, bringing silk, spices, and slaves. The Northmen's fame grew, not only as warriors but as traders. Their raids fed empires. Their cruelty became currency. As the day burned on, the captives were herded into pens, their bodies marked and branded. Some looked to the sky, praying for the storm to return, but the gods were silent. Only the merchant spoke, shouting numbers over screams. When night came, the market fell quiet. Fires flickered low, and the smell of blood mixed with salt and smoke. In the darkness, one girl, barely alive, lifted her head toward the stars. Somewhere across that same sky, her village still smoldered. She didn't cry. She didn't pray. She simply whispered, "Remember me." None of them would be remembered. Not by name, not by story, only by price. The rivers of the east gleamed like silver snakes beneath the setting sun. Long ships moved slowly through their winding paths, their sails heavy with wind and sorrow. The cargo below deck, men, women, and children, had no idea where the water was taking them, only that it never flowed backward. From the cold seas of Scandinavia, the Vikings pushed inland, across rivers that carved through forests and kingdoms alike. They followed ancient trade routes, carrying not just goods but people, bought, sold, and traded as if the gods themselves had set a price on human souls. Through the lands of the Slavs, the Rus, and the Khazars, the longships glided like black shadows. Every few days, the crews would stop to rest, to barter, or to sell. Each stop meant fewer captives left on board. Those taken from the coast of England or Ireland now stood beneath new suns, in lands where their names had no meaning. Their bodies bore the marks of chains, their eyes the silence of surrender. The Vikings dealt with the east through the rivers, the Dnieper, the Volga, and beyond. In Kiev, the markets were rich. In Novgorod, they were brutal. The merchants of the Abbasid Caliphate paid well for pale-skinned women and strong young men. The Vikings, ever practical, called them thralls, property, not people. For the captives, time dissolved into a blur of land and water. They learned the weight of silence, the taste of dust, the sting of the whip. At night, when fires burned low, some whispered to each other of home, tiny fragments of memory slipping between tears. A field, a mother's song, the sound of rain. But with each passing mile, even memories began to fade. The girl who once prayed for the sea to take her now only stared at the stars, no longer knowing if they were the same ones that shone over England. Still, the ships moved eastward, toward lands of silk and gold where their pain would be traded again. When they reached the city gates of the east, the captives saw towers of marble and minarets of gold. To the Vikings, it was a land of profit. To the captives, it was the end of their world and the beginning of their legend. For among them, one girl refused to die quietly. Her name was gone, her life stolen, but somewhere deep within her silence, a spark still burned, and that spark would one day set fire to an empire. The city of the east glittered beneath the rising sun, its domes gold and its streets alive with merchants and slaves alike. Among the crowd, a girl once from England walked silently, her eyes no longer the color of fear but of ash. Years had passed. The world had forgotten her name, but she had not forgotten the world. In the courts of the east, the Vikings became legends, not as conquerors, but as suppliers of flesh. They traded captives for coins, gold for glory, and walked away richer each season. The empires they fed, Byzantium, Baghdad, and beyond, thrived on the misery of the nameless. The girl had been sold 3 times. First in Kiev, then in the markets of the Black Sea, and finally here, in the palace of a nobleman who collected beauty the way others collected art. Her chains were now made of silk, but they still cut deep. Her voice, once trembling, had grown silent from practice. She was alive, but her soul moved like a ghost through marble halls. Yet even in silence she remembered. She remembered the screams from the raid, the cries on the ship, the market's heat, the silver that sealed her fate. And with memory came anger, quiet, patient, dangerous. One night when the palace slept and moonlight slipped through the latticed windows, she walked to the fountain in the courtyard. The water was still. Her reflection looked back at her, but it was not the girl from England anymore. It was something forged from pain, something that could no longer be owned. Some said that same night, a fire began in the lower quarters of the city. Others said a Viking trader was found dead by morning, his throat cut cleanly by a blade stolen from his own ship. No one ever knew who did it, but whispers spread that one of the slaves had escaped. Years later, travelers in the markets of Baghdad spoke of a pale woman who lived among the desert tribes, silent, fierce, unbroken. They said she spoke little, but when she looked at you, it felt as though she saw straight through your soul. Some claimed she was once a thrall. Others said she was a spirit, haunting the men who had once sold her. History never wrote her name, but her story lived on in the fear of every man who saw a burning village and thought of silver before mercy. For in every raid that followed, in every scream carried by the wind, the Vikings would remember the shadow that vengeance left behind, and the girl who became their curse.